Hey, welcome to Love with Francesca, where we deep dive into relationships, self-love, and the empowering journey to authentic connection and healing. I just want to let you know that there's a fly in my apartment and I'm currently in a battle with it. So I can't seem to get it out. So if you see me swooshing or doing anything weird, it's because of that. Anyway, just a quick disclaimer. We'll go ahead and get started. So, like I said, welcome to today's episode. Today, the topic near and dear to my heart is navigating the holidays. So, whatever that means to you, whether it means surviving the holidays or whether it means just like figuring out how to enjoy your time and not step on anyone's toes, but also not let anyone step on your toes. Like I said, whatever that means to you, it's okay. I just want to start off kind of talking about, I think maybe to some of you listening, this might sound a little bit obvious, but just in case, the holidays can be very stressful. So for some people, it can bring up grief, it can bring up old wounds, it can bring up conflict. There's a lot of expectations around the holidays that things are going to be perfect and magnificent and everything, but depending on the relationship that you have with your family members or the people that you tend to spend the holidays with, things may not always be as wonderful and, merry and jolly or whatever as we want it to be. And I think that happens for a series of different reasons, right? So take, for example, if there's family that you already have little issues with during the year, naturally, if you're going to spend like 2 weeks together or 5 days together and it's just all of you together all the time, just spending so much time together, I think it's inevitable that there's going to be some conflict or it's going to, issues are going to come up. And if you don't already have certain skills and strategies to work through those issues and manage that conflict, everything just gets very exacerbated. So that's one thing. I think another element is the fact that the holidays can bring up a lot of grief, which can also cause even more conflict. So maybe, this is the first holiday you're spending without a loved one, or it's the anniversary of when someone passed. I know my grandfather, I think if I remember correctly, passed on the 24th of December. So that's always kind of a hard day, just kind of like commemorating him in the way that we can. But everyone kind of reacts different to that grief. So some people may want to isolate themselves. Some people may drink or eat a little bit more than the usual. Some people, if they're having a hard time sitting with the hurt that they're feeling, they may act out that hurt. So they may lash out more easily, they may snap more easily. They may kind of like initiate some sort of conflict, and you're like, why is this person picking a fight with me right now? Like it's Christmas Eve. I just want to have a nice evening, and you're picking a fight with me. The other thing is that maybe, there's certain traditions that you want to uphold to commemorate someone. And maybe you're like the only one maintaining those traditions and no one else really is. So it can leave you feeling quite isolated, quite lonely, quite sad, quite frustrated even, right? Like, why am I the only one making our mom's like special dish and none of you even care about it? And vice versa, right? Like maybe you're watching one person do so much work to uphold these traditions and you're thinking like, I actually just really wanted to chill. Like, as much as I love those meals and things that we make, it was actually a lot of work to have to make them, and I never really enjoyed doing that. And so now it's kind of like I finally don't have to, and that can be really liberating. So, in a sense, the issue really comes that, we can all be living the same situation, the same holidays, the same everything, but we're actually having a very different experience in that same context. And I think what happens is that when we don't have an ability to vulnerably, clearly share our experiences and talk about them openly and be in relationships where we feel safe enough to do that and where our vulnerability will be received with kindness and compassion, it can create a lot of divide amongst family members, or like I said, even friends, right? The other issue, obviously, I mean, there's a lot, right? There's like, who do you spend your holidays with? Whether it's like, your partner's in-laws or your in-laws. Um, and then maybe your kids want to do a whole other thing. So that can add another layer of complication, right? Feelings get hurt if you're saying that you don't want to spend it with me or my family. Feelings get hurt. There's a lot of pressure on gift giving. I might go on a whole tangent about gift giving, y'all, because I have a lot of feelings about it. But, there can be issues around gift giving. How much money am I supposed to spend on gifts to show this person that I love them enough? What if I get the wrong gift? What if I offend someone by the gift that I give them? Or what if I don't get a gift for this person because I'm not typically used to giving gifts in this situation? Maybe my family has different norms around gift giving. And then maybe I give a gift or I don't give a gift, and then this person gets offended, and it's like, what the heck? Like, I was just trying to, my intentions were good, right? So there's just a lot of different situations. And then let's just add the funsies one in there, right? There's always going to be those family members that are going to ask you questions about the thing in your life that you still have not figured out, whether it's your career or your relationship or your finances, or maybe they disagree with where you move to or how you're raising your children. Like, there's just so many things that can come up during the holidays. And again, going back to, I think one of the first thing that I said is that when you're spending so much time with people, it can get to a point where your bucket, just like your bucket of like your patience, let's say, gets so drained because you're like, okay, I already dealt with like Aunt Nancy's comment about my parenting. Then I dealt with like Uncle whatever's comment about politics. Now I'm dealing with my mom freaking out about some sort of ornament that was broken by like little Joey or something. And it's just too many things in one day emotionally for us to really like handle and have the skills and tools to be able to respond every time with kindness and respect and all those things. So I just kind of want to start off by acknowledging why holidays can be so triggering. And that doesn't even include some of the more challenging situations that people deal with, which I think I'll just kind of mention briefly, although I won't go too much into it because I think those are situations that you should seek out some sort of professional support with. But there's also, people are still also in relation somehow to someone that's been abusive to them in their life, whether it's a family member that was physically or sexually abusive to them as a kid that is going to be at the family gathering. Maybe you haven't yet shared about what happened to you. So no one knows whether or not that maybe you don't feel comfortable around this family member. Um, there's people that are co-parenting with an ex-partner that was abusive towards them. And that can be really challenging of like, okay, now how do I figure out the dynamics of the holidays, given that maybe being around this person or my children being around this person feels very unsafe to me right now. And, if we add on the layer of like, maybe my family isn't supportive of me leaving this person in the first place, or maybe they don't even know why I left this person in the first place. So maybe they're making comments of like, why aren't they coming? And you're just like, like panic moment. So there's just a lot of, reasons why I think the holidays can be really triggering for some people. And just kind of adding the fact that we're having a bit of downtime. So if you're someone that's always like go, 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 like get up, go to work, come home, do the thing, get the kids, get organized, all the things, like get ready for the next day, and that's just kind of like how your day goes, the holidays might even be challenging for you because by spending time where you're like slowing down and things are a little bit more quiet and things are less intense, that might bring up some feelings that maybe you haven't dealt with yet, or you don't really want to or know how to deal with, and you've maybe been avoiding. So it can just be really challenging. And I feel like there's like so many other examples that I could give right now of challenges. These are the main ones that come to my mind, but there's so many more, obviously. But let's just say that the holidays might test your boundaries and your emotional resilience. So that bucket that I was talking about earlier, kind of like the bucket of your patience, um, that might get really tested in the next, week or two. So where I want to start us off is just very simply, there's a lot that we can't control. We can't control the comments that other people are going to make. We can't control the expectations that other people have on us. We can't control the fact that someone isn't present at a gathering or, whether they just chose not to be or whether they've passed and so they can't be. Those are all the things that we cannot control. And the reason I say that first is because before we get into the nuances of setting boundaries, I just want to be really, really clear about what is within my control during this period and how do I best focus on what I can control. That's really all you can do. And that's how, if you really want to measure how the holidays went, measure it based on what you were able to do. You can't measure it, I mean, you can. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if you measure it on how other people chose to treat you, depending on what kind of family you have or the people that you surround yourself with, the holidays, it might be a really low results. Like it might be like a 2 out of 10. But if you can instead change your perspective and focus on what you can control, the holidays might be an 8 out of 10, even if all the people were doing all the things that they were going to do in the first place. Why? Because you got to focus on yourself, your relationship with yourself, and your ability to reclaim your power, reclaim your ability to choose whether or not you're going to engage in a situation or not, and then how you're going to engage in that situation. So we're going to get into that a little bit. Most of the people that I tend to work with, and also myself, we come from a history of people pleasing or like performing in relationships. So it becomes very challenging during the holidays to be constantly people pleasing because either you're pleasing everyone else and your bucket is just like getting drained like so quickly, or maybe you're starting to set boundaries or you're learning how to set boundaries or you're learning how to show up for yourself in a healthy way. And that might upset people or confuse people because you're changing the dynamics here. So that's kind of like just a natural process that I find happens. And the holidays is an especially challenging period because usually, when you're coming from people pleasing, already setting one boundary a day is like, that was exhausting. I'm good. I'm gonna go take a nap. Like that's as much as I could do. But during the holidays, if you're spending such long periods of time with people and there's various boundaries to set, that can become really exhausting and really overwhelming. So, like I said, focus on yourself. Focus on setting realistic goals for yourself that you think you can follow through on. And what I mean by that is just take a second to check in with yourself as I'm sharing this and really, 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 with so much compassion, be honest with yourself about like, where am I at where it comes to setting boundaries? Am I a brand new beginner? Did I just discover this world and I'm just starting to do this stuff? Or, I have some practice under my belt. Some people it's a little harder with, but in general, I feel good about. Or is it like, yeah, girl, we've been studying this, we've been learning this, we've been working on ourselves. Like we are ready to show everything that we've learned, whether it's like in therapy or in coaching, whether you're like, my therapist is going to be so proud, like I've done it all. I'm ready to go. So just really check in with yourself. Like, where are you at on that spectrum? And depending on where you're at, set realistic goals for yourself, right? So someone that's been working on boundaries for quite amount, there's a little fly again distracting me from this lovely conversation I'm trying to have with you. So if you're someone that's just starting out with boundaries, I wouldn't recommend the same goals to you that I would recommend to someone who's been working on this for a long, period of time, who's been practicing, who's been like building that muscle, right? If you're kind of at the very beginning of this, I would really just focus on, let's just develop a little bit of awareness around the holidays. So plan ahead of time. Okay. I would say this for anyone, but plan ahead of time. So if you're kind of a beginner, I would say, let's just start looking at your typical holidays. What are the typical issues that come up during the holidays? Who are the typical people that are challenging to deal with or frustrating you or you feel like aren't really respecting you? Like, let's just take inventory. What are the situations, right? And once you've figured out those situations, let's just choose like three main priorities that we want to focus on. So, Uncle Nancy, that's going to comment on the fact that I'm still single, we're just going to choose to ignore her and like we're not going to deal with that. But maybe like your dad who has issues with, let's just say, like drinking a little more than he should or could and then becoming aggressive, maybe that can be the number one priority, right? And we don't really need to worry about Uncle Nancy. We don't really have enough energy, excuse me, Aunt Nancy. We don't really have enough energy to deal with her today. No shade to anyone called Nancy. You guys are wonderful. I'm just using a random name as an example. We don't have enough energy to deal with her. We need to deal with dad. Or like maybe we have a sibling that's always like one-upping us and putting us down, and that really tears us apart. Let's just focus on them for a minute, right? And let's just focus on like what strategies, and then I would say, yeah, just focus on a few priorities, right? And then what strategies can you implement for that? What can you handle doing that would feel respectful for yourself? Because the thing is, when you're kind of new to setting boundaries, in my experience, we often confuse boundaries with like always speaking up for ourselves. We think like, oh, I learned how to speak up for myself. I got to do it with everyone. That's not necessarily true. There's some people that it's actually better to just walk away from the situation calmly, quietly. Like, is it like the Irish exit or something? Is that the expression? Someone let me know in the comments if that's the expression. But when you kind of just like exit a room very quietly, no one even realizes that you're leaving until like 30 minutes have passed and they don't know where you are. Maybe that is the best strategy for you to use with someone who's going to cause a scene if you do say something and you do speak up. Maybe if you do, but then again, there's other situations where you're like, no, actually, I think saying something would feel really good and it would feel good to me and it would feel beneficial. Great, let's speak up and we'll get into some details of how to do that. So I think I would say plan ahead, and when you're planning, don't plan the same plan for every situation. Okay, so just kind of treat every situation as its own different thing to navigate and maybe figure out like what is the correct strategy for this situation. And the thing is, when you're trying to figure out what the correct strategy is, it's not necessarily the correct strategy for your best friend or for someone else. Like this isn't really the time to like get advice from other people and feel like you need to implement it immediately. This is the time to really listen to yourself and get to know like what would what kind of boundary could I set that would help me to feel safe in the situation, that would allow me to feel good about myself, and would allow me to get through the holidays as peacefully as possible. Because listen, if there's this conversation that you need to have with someone because goddamn, because they've been doing something that's been annoying you for months, this isn't really the time to do that. Maybe the time to do that is before or after the holidays. So I know I kind of got a little jumbled there talking about beginners versus not beginners, but I think you got the gist. Obviously, if you're not a beginner, this all applies to you, right? Still, look at the situation, take inventory. What are the things that upset me the most? What are the things that are hardest for me to deal with? Great. What strategies do I have that are available to me? And think of it now. I wouldn't wait to think about all this until those situations happen. You want to really plan ahead of time. Why? Because when you're triggered in a situation, your nervous system literally gets activated. And so what happens, I'm going to try, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm going to try and demonstrate this for you. Let's say that this is your brain. Back here, you have your hippocampus, your amygdala. So your amygdala It's kind of, and they're both very interconnected when it comes to this. So your amygdala is like the fight or flight response, right? That's telling you like urgency, red flag. We need to react very quickly to the situation because we feel unsafe. So your amygdala, when it gets very activated, if it gets very, very activated, let's say that this is your prefrontal cortex, which kind of helps you make like executive decisions, helps you think through things, helps you think through maybe your like impulsive, fight or flight reactions. When you're very activated, it's like this part just goes offline. And then it's like all the fight or flight or freeze reactions are just popping off. And so you're just going to be acting very impulsively. And you may not like the way that you reacted. And in these situations, especially in the holidays, what I find is best is doing your best to respond to a situation versus reacting to a situation. So if you're able to plan ahead of time and you know that when that certain person does that certain thing or does it all day long, there's a certain point where you reach capacity and you have no more patience, your bucket is empty, your amygdala is firing, your prefrontal cortex is gone, offline. That's not the moment where you're going to decide, how should I respond to this situation? Because by then you're like, F the situation, F you, I'm out. Or like, F you, and now I'm going to argue with you and pick a fight with you and like cause a whole scene. And then you're going to come back at me and it's going to just cause like all this like drama, if you could say. Um, not to say that you're being dramatic, your feelings are very valid. It's just, I think typically the people that I work with, I know are people that want things to stay calm and want things to stay peaceful and don't want to really ruffle any feathers or, cause any sort of big conflict. So if that's kind of how you identify yourself, I would say it's a really good opportunity for you to practice taking inventory and planning ahead of time. And based off your plans, listen, they're not going to go perfectly. It's totally fine if they don't go perfectly. But at least if you think about it ahead of time, kind of like an emotional toolbox. I loved using that example when I used to work with kids. It was like, what's your little toolbox that you're going to use? And you can even draw it out or write it down. Like, go on your phone and make a note that says, like, Francesca's emotional toolbox for the holidays. And when Francesca's freaking out and she's having a really hard time, calmly responding to a situation and she doesn't have access to all the wisdom and all the books that she's read in the past few years about nonviolent communication and all that fun stuff. She's going to open the note and she's going to be like, oh, right, these are all my tools for my toolbox. I remember that I can breathe calmly. I can take some space. I can take a break. I can call a friend. I can listen to music. I can excuse myself and go take a walk or go do something that's in some way relaxing and regulating for myself. And not necessarily, everyone has different, things that help them calm down. But even just allowing yourself to like decompress a little bit and fill your bucket back up. So really focusing on self-care, that's going to allow you to walk back into those rooms, back into those spaces, and continue responding intentionally and authentically to what's happening in the room. Um, so I kind of want to wrap this up because I just want to make sure this is like short and sweet and helpful for you. And you can always listen to this several times if that feels, beneficial to you. But I really want you to focus on, like we said, right? So plan ahead, come up with strategies, build that toolbox of yours, and then think ahead of time, right? So if you know that like if you're spending a whole day with someone, you're going to be exhausted, plan to go for a walk. And listen, you don't need to tell the person like you're exhausting me, I'm going to go for a walk. You don't need to do that. You can just say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. I would love to go just get some fresh air. And if they say, oh, we'll come with you, be like, you know what, that's so sweet of you to invite me to that. But actually, I would love, there's this podcast I've been dying to listen to, and they just released an episode, like make it like some white lie. They don't know. There's a podcast I listened to, and there's an episode they released, and I really just wanted to listen to it. So like, I'm just gonna go listen to it and I'll be right back. So those are easy, kind of gentle ways that you can communicate what you're needing without causing any sort of like difficulty. Okay, a few more things. Definitely seek out some support. I would include that in your emotional toolbox. Maybe there's people that you can have on call. Maybe there's people that you can be like, listen, like Christmas Day, it's gonna be challenging. I might need to call you. Can you please let me know when you'd be available? So that's another way in which you can plan ahead. What's that support that you can get that you can kind of plan for or expect to seek out in the days that you're having a hard time? And maybe that support doesn't look like calling someone or texting someone. Maybe it just looks like listening to podcasts like these and episodes like these that are just validating and affirming and letting you know, like, hey, this is hard for everyone. It's okay if you're struggling with it, right? So just kind of think through the different options that you have available to you. And I think, not lastly, we're almost there, but I think, like I said, once you figure out where you're at on the spectrum of beginner to advanced, make sure you take the time, once you've set those realistic goals for yourself, make sure you take the time on a daily basis or something throughout the next few weeks to really focus on your small wins. Like, when was there a time where you could have snapped back, but you chose not to? When was there a time that you left the room instead of staying in the potential conflict? When was there a time that you listened to music so that you could decompress? Like, these are the small wins that I want you to focus on because that's what's going to allow you to feel so, so, so proud of yourself and how you navigated these holidays. Because again, you can only control yourself. Okay, I think we are at the last thing. You are not responsible for fixing everything. You are not responsible for taking care of everyone else. If you see people that are struggling or there's conflict happening, it is not on you to fix that conflict or manage that conflict. You get to pick and choose what you give your energy to because your energy is super valuable. And right now, if you're feeling like, I'm going to really need my energy for myself because already I don't know if I'll have enough energy for myself. Great. Focus on yourself. Focus on maintaining that energy for yourself, filling your cup and doing the best that you can to navigate the holidays. Because what I have seen, and actually I've experienced this from other people, I witnessed how other people handled certain situations when like the whole family was together and I was like nervous about the chaos or whatever that was going to happen. I come from a big Dominican family, so that's kind of why I'm saying this. Um, just by them handling situations in a healthier way and not explaining to me or not trying to fix my problem, nothing, just by them role modeling that, I was able to pick up on how they handled certain situations and I was able to take those lessons and make them mine. And that was extremely beneficial. More than the times where someone tried to like help me in a situation, but then what they actually did was add fuel to the fire. So I really want to encourage you to focus on yourself, focus on what feels good for you, focus on what you can control, plan ahead, and also just have like some grace and compassion for yourself. Like, the holidays are challenging for everyone. Whatever it is that you're going through, it's real, it's valid, and your energy matters, your feelings matter, the way that whatever you're able to do to create a pleasant and relaxing holiday experience is important because if you're listening to me, you're probably a hardworking girly or woman, whatever you want to identify with. And so this is really your time to rest and recharge. You do need to implement some strategies to be able to do that, just depending on what dynamic you're handling. But trust me that when you keep practicing implementing these strategies, naturally the people around you will, they will adapt. They will because they have to. Because if you remove your energy, people can't argue with you. It's as simple as that. And as always, if you want more help or more support, feel free to follow this podcast, obviously, and then follow me on Instagram and just message me. This is a time that I think there's no shame in asking for help and just kind of raising your hand and seeking some support. So whether that's reaching out to me or whether that's reaching out to your therapist or your friends, feel free to just access the support that's available to you because you deserve it. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast was helpful to you, feel free to leave me a review. Let me know in the comments if this was helpful. I just want to make sure I'm making content that is beneficial to you and supporting you in creating a healthier relationship with yourself and the people around you. So I will see you next week. Happy holidays, and we'll chat soon.